If you've had any time in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous, you will be astounded how the senior members gain so much influence on the rest of the group. Well, actually it's pretty easily explained when you look at how a cult operates. And if you stay in Alcoholics Anonymous long enough, one day you'll be promoted to be a cult leader. I went to 2 meetings of Alcoholics Anonymous. I went after 11 months of sobriety. I stepped into 2 meetings in 2 weeks in 2 different locations in the town I was living in Montana at the time. I'd already survived the initial 5-day detox from alcohol withdrawal. I managed the next 40 days, all the way to day 45. The first day I could say I actually felt good. Second phase completed, where the cravings are the most intense and largely continuous. I never picked the bottle back up. I had made my non-negotiable contract of never touching alcohol again, and I continued on to the 6-month mark, the time where if you cross that milepost, you have a better than average chance of staying sober for keeps. I continued on my program of holistic reinvention, all the way to the 2-year mark, the end of protracted withdrawal and claimed cure from the addiction. And I did all this without the help from Alcoholics Anonymous. So what led me to wander into the rooms at almost 1 year sober? I wanted to see what AA had to offer. Now, I've been accused of making grand assumptions about the methods of AA after my mere 2 instances of sitting in their circle. But I came from a family of alcoholics. My brother was a longtime member of AA who finally left it as well and deems it a cult like I do. I have great familiarity with your program, AA, and your dismal outcomes. But I wanted to see for myself. After all, at 1 year sober, you still feel like a stranger in a strange land. You aren't sure how to exist in your new world. I thought possibly some other escapees from John Barleycorn's grasp might have some insight, some coping tools, something. And what I found was a cult. It was a cult that snarled when I declared that I used to be an alcoholic. You could have heard a pin drop in the room when my turn came in the circle and I stood up and announced this fact. I saw others who had the same or even more time sober than myself. They didn't seem to be on a path of reconstruction of their being. They weren't involved in the fitness program, that was evident. They smoked, guzzled cup after cup of coffee, and dumped sugar continuously into their systems. People with a year's sobriety resembled where I was at month 2. And I noticed something else. Most of the attendees were new to sobriety. Now, I expected some newly sober, but I also expected a wide spectrum of members, some who quit last week, but many with years in sobriety, and of course the senior members in the circle, who had a decade or 2 since their break of the friendship with Johnny B. And that was puzzling. Where were the intermediate members of the group? Outside of 1 member who had 20 years sober and a handful of sponsors with long-term sobriety, there was only one 30-something man who had 2 years clean. And he looked to be an absolute anxiety-ridden mess. The rest of the room was filled largely with people who had mere months to a year in sobriety. And this makes perfect sense. Most of what I read outside of one outlying study says AA has at least an 80% failure rate. If you take the sample of people who actually stay sober long term, and the people who do manage to be in that minority, they never leave AA. If you stay long enough in any given organization, you'll eventually be, quote, promoted. You become the esteemed sponsor. You gain your emblems of high-ranking chips. You become one of the designated leaders of the group. There are committees you serve on, and more importantly, people start looking to your guidance, your advice, and word. And your word is now infallible. Now, AA will deny they have, quote, leaders. They state they're alcoholics only for other alcoholics, nothing more. No one is designated to wear the gold robe, they say. But the fact is, this isn't true. After my shocking heresy of declaring I used to be an alcoholic, the leader of the group came over to me to give me a lecture that no one used to be addicted. You're always an addict, he stated emphatically. If I didn't accept this from the wizened sage in front of me, I was doomed to topple off the wagon rolling across the prairie. I shut him down immediately. I told him I was highly fit now, and his clan wasn't. That I was involved in the advancement of self. They were not. I could go to a social outing without being panic-stricken like a story we just heard from the guy who had a year more in sobriety than me. My diet was clean, I didn't smoke, and when I hit the 2-year mark of sobriety, my neurochemistry would be balanced and I would declare cure from the addiction. He wasn't happy for me, he was incensed. He walked away with a glare, and I'm surprised he didn't just call me a dry drunk like they usually do, or state that I wasn't a real alcoholic. The two standbys when you defy their program. I had already noted by my second and final meeting in AA that the members in the room had nothing to offer me. If anything, they were living examples of what not to do. But I wondered why the 20-year sober guy was still there. He stated in the opening that he attended meetings 5 and 6 nights a week and AA was the only way, in which he heard my litany shortly afterward, which only compounded his anger. But after years of reflection, as I am now 17 years sober, it makes sense why the senior members hold on to that seniority night after night, why AA is so integral in every aspect of their lives, why their existence revolves forever around the 12 steps in the rooms. Because the senior members of Alcoholics have something they didn't before, and that is now status. Years before I started the anti-AA concept, I had a YouTube channel much like the one that parallels these articles. It was focused on attacking and debunking Christian fundamentalism. I grew up a sleeve length away from the Bible Belt's fiery brimstone. I had friends who were evangelicals. The status of the senior members there was exactly the same as those in Alcoholics Anonymous. The pastor, who was usually ignorant of his own Bible and its history, gave infallible words during his Sunday sermons and anywhere else he decided to intrude, as did those in the tier right under him, the ones who ran the Bible study before the sermons, the leaders of the youth groups like Horizons. They are regular Joes and Janes outside of their pews, but are lords in them. They get to be somebody when they enter the church doors. It is the exact same scenario in AA as well as any other cult which I accuse AA of being. When one first enters the doors of AA, that person is in the worst shape of his life. I would have been if I had entered the first week sober. They pay their dues by listening to their sponsors and senior members without question. Their chips accumulate over time. Pretty soon, they are giving speeches, and if they're in the minority of those who manage to abstain from good old JB's handshake, they will elevate to the all-knowing sponsor as well. And one day they will reach the rank of Grand Master of the room, whether it's designated or not. What they have to say matters and will be accepted. And if a rogue like me utters verbiage outside of the established and unquestionable tenets, the cadre will be reinforced by the echoing cries from the sickly sheep who follow them blindly. Very few will question this perceived earned authority when that tidal wave of repercussion is always close to the shoreline. Have you ever heard the concept that power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely? That adage doesn't just apply to politicians. It's evident in any situation where a person is elevated to infallible status, whether a pastor in a fundamental church or just a room in a church full of AA members. These longtime senior members are people who largely are big nothings outside of the rooms. They certainly aren't living well if this is where they spend their time every night. They aren't pursuing excellence. They are reiterating their addict status, their diseased state, which will never be cured. But when you're the high priest of the leper colony, the other lepers will follow. No one outside of the colony would. And that would be my endpoint to those who are in AA and questioning whether they should remain. The last person you want to ask if you should leave a cult is one of the cult leaders. It's like announcing that you're leaving that evangelical church to the pastor. You'll be shamed. Fear tactics will be used. In the church, they indoctrinate the fear of hell. In AA, the terror is returning to the hell of alcoholism. They would not be happy if they ran into your fulfilled life 5 years after you departed from the rooms. They would be enraged. They would be enraged because you put their power in check. You ignored their infallible words, their wizened law. And worst yet, you made them insignificant to you. For an AA leader, this is the only significance he has in his life. I hope if you have achieved sobriety that you exit yourself from the cult of AA sermons. You must remember, the senior members there only hold status in those rooms. The meetings are what give them self-esteem and sense of purpose. And they're only repeating what they were programmed with long ago. It doesn't mean they're right, and the failure rate of Alcoholics Anonymous shows they certainly are not. They have gained their status by means of advancing in a cult. Outside of the cult, they don't hold anything at all. Now, if this content was helpful for you, go ahead and follow along and subscribe. And check out my own work, How I Defeated Alcoholism, the small book, How I Beat Alcoholism and Why Alcoholics Anonymous Doesn't Work. Links for that and other self-help books are in the description. And remember your contract. Be sober at sundown, and I will see you at the next sunrise.